Naughty Dog has officially announced the cancellation of their Last of Us Online multiplayer project spinoff game that was announced at last year's Summer Game Fest with Jeff Keighley and Neil Druckmann. Neil Druckmann actually came on stage and he showed a bit of concept art for the game that said, that showed and gave some details that showed that the game was going to be set in San Francisco. It was going to feature new characters. It would build off of the gameplay mechanics of The Last of Us Part 2, and it would add on to the multiplayer foundation that was established with The Last of Us re-release with The Last of Us Remastered back on PS4. And essentially, this was going to be a massive multiplayer project that the team planned to support for years. And this was set to be one of PlayStation's showcases, one of their headliners for this new pushed into live service that Sony and PlayStation really want to get into, and that they've really set the expectations that they are going to be heading in a live service direction and trying to put more focus on that, with of course this year's PlayStation Showcase showing absolutely no single player games other than Spider-Man 2, which we already knew was coming. They only showed CGI trailers for multiplayer games and live service games that they want to do, because that's what Sony wants to focus on right now. They want to focus on live service games. We saw that with the Concord live action trailer. We saw that with I forget the other game from the Raymond James studio, the Haven Studios. I forget that game too. And then of course there was Bungie's new game as well. There's just a lot of multiplayer projects, and this was set to be one of those projects, and I was actually looking forward to it because I do enjoy the combat of The Last of Us. I love The Last of Us Part 1, and Part 2 was not my cup of tea, but the gameplay there is still immensely satisfying. The graphics, the world building there, it's all immensely interesting. And this could have been Sony's big hitter when it comes to their live service push and their live service aspirations, but now we know that this is canceled, and the problem seemed to have arised. The problem seemed to have arise when Bungie was called in and bought by Sony, to help them with their live service push. And essentially, the reports around were that Bungie, was going around all the different multiplayer studios and evaluating them and reviewing them and seeing, okay, which of these games are going to work, which ones may need some extra work. And apparently there was some questions that were raised, some concerns that came up with The Last of Us Online, with Bungie not thinking that Naughty Dog essentially had the juice. They didn't think they had a game that was going to be set to be profitable for Sony in the long run. They thought that this was a game that maybe, felt a little too ambitious, and maybe it was going to sort of do things in a different way. Of course, we know that, again, Naughty Dog wanted to have story content with this Last of Us Online game, so having story content in a live service game maybe is something that can throw people off, or it can it can create a situation where maybe it's almost like the Destiny 2 sort of thing, at least for me, where it's like there's so many DLC expansions that it can be easy to get lost in that shuffle and feel like, well, if I'm not caught up with this thing, how can I just jump into this world? And it does intimidate some gamers from jumping into a world when there's story content and they feel like they're missing out on it. So it just becomes too much for them to want to keep going or hop into it just to go in and play a few matches or buy some skins or buy a battle pass. People have to really invest their time and their money and their focus and attention into these live service games, and it feels like Bungie thought there was no way that people were going to do that for this Last of Us multiplayer game. And it really does suck, because it feels like actually Naughty Dog even says in their own blog post that they had been working on pre-production for this Last of Us Online project since they were working on The Last of Us Part 2, which released all the way back in 2020. And think about it, we're getting a Last of Us Part 2 remaster set to come out in January of 2024. It just begs the question, has this just been a massive waste of time for Naughty Dog and for PlayStation? Because if you look at what the other PlayStation studios have done in the time that The Last of Us Part 2 was released, Insomniac has rolled out Miles Morales, Spider-Man Remastered, Spider-Man 2, Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. Sony Santa Monica has given us God of War Ragnarok. They just dropped the Valhalla DLC for free, which is a roguelike that's offering a ton of new content and replayable content. And then of course there's There's of course Guerrilla Games with Horizon Forbidden West and what a massive success that game was, and then of course the expansion DLC for that game, and then Ghost of Tsushima, a 2020 game, even had a story expansion, and the faction, or not the factions, but their own online version, multiplayer game DLC got released as well for Sucker Punch with Ghost of Tsushima Legends, and then of course the Iki Island DLC, and all these other PlayStation studios have been putting out content. Of course, Housemarque with Returnal. I mean, there's been so much output from the PlayStation studios ever since the release of The Last of Us Part 2, which is when Naughty Dog has been working on The Last of Us Online game, and since then, Naughty Dog's got nothing to show for except for a remake of The Last of Us Part 1 and a remaster of The Last of Us Part 2. And it just makes you feel like, this studio has been really struggling as of late, and it just makes me feel like, man, what a massive waste of time this has been for Naughty Dog and PlayStation. And they did say as well in their blog post that they do have more than one ambitious brand new single player game that they're working on, and they can't wait to share more about what's to come when they're ready. And that's all well and good, but I get it that Naughty Dog is best at doing single player games, but when are these projects going to come out now? Because so much time has been allocated to this Last of Us multiplayer spin-off game that has just been, it feels like it's just been dead from the beginning. We never got any gameplay. We never got a trailer. We got nothing more than one image of concept art. And it just makes me feel like, with all the time that was put into this, that is now means nothing. It means nothing for players. It means nothing for Naughty Dog. It means nothing for PlayStation, other than wasted time and wasted profit and wasted resources. These single player games that Naughty Dog is going to release next, what are they, and when are we going to see them now? Because right now we don't even know what some of the other studios are working on. We literally have no PlayStation exclusive PlayStation Studios games that are announced for 2024. And I imagine all those other games are much earlier in development than these new Naughty Dog single-player games, and those games haven't even been shown yet to us, the consumers. So, man, it feels like we're probably not going to get any new Naughty Dog game. I'm not talking about Last of Us remasters and Last of Us remakes for the 30th time. I don't think we're going to get any new Naughty Dog single-player game until maybe the end of the PS5 generation, and that's just crazy to say out loud, but that's certainly what it's looking like right now, and that's something that I never would have thought possible, just about a year or two ago. But it looks like that really is the direction that Naughty Dog is heading in right now, where it's very possible that we may not see a game from them until the end of the PS5 generation. And it could be crazy enough to the point where it's even like the PS6 could already be announced and Naughty Dog's barely announcing their next game and getting ready to show it to us. By that time, people will be moving on to the next generation, and Naughty Dog would have never ever put out a brand new game in the PS5 generation, and that would be absolutely insane. But yeah, that's pretty much all there is to talk about here. There's not a lot of positive stuff to take out from this story and this game getting canceled. It really is a shame, because I was looking forward to it. I love The Last of Us factions. I play that still every year, and it's a lot of fun, and it sucks. It's a shame that this game is not going to get released, but hey, that's just the way it works in the live service field. So hopefully Sony and PlayStation, can take this information and realize that live service is not, it's just not what PlayStation does best. It really isn't, and I feel like it's a waste of time to try and focus on live service. I feel like what PlayStation needs to do is just say, they need to partner up with other people who are already making live service games and try and work to get, benefits for people playing those other established games or these new multiplayer games that are coming in, and give them reasons, give them incentive to want to play those games on a PlayStation 5. Because coming up with your own live service games, I just don't think that that's the move for Sony and PlayStation that's going to benefit them the most in the long run. I feel like they've shown what they do best is their own original story-driven games, and then they can add in some gameplay spice in there with games like Returnal offering a roguelike that is something that's a brand new genre that not a lot of people get into. Same thing, we're just seeing it now with Ragnarok. People are playing a roguelike with Valhalla and they're loving it. That's something new, and I think that that's the direction that Sony needs to focus on, is just their own original single player driven games. But yeah, that's going to be all the news for you guys here in today's video. I know it's a bit of a long one and I sort of just went on a tangent, but I had to get my thoughts out there. And yeah, if you want to stay up to date on all the latest in the world of movie news, TV news, and video game news, well, you're already in the right place, and I hope you consider subscribing to the channel because I would love to have you along for the ride. But until next time, this has been Millennium Media. I will see you all very soon.